Yayoi Kusama. Yayoi Kusama is a Japanese world-renowned artist, possibly the most well-known living contemporary artist of today. Born on March 22nd in 1929 in Matsumoto, Nagano, in the Empire of Japan, she was born into a wealthy family of merchants who possessed a plant nursery. There were large flower fields in that nursery where she would play and paint, and it would become one of the first places she experienced some of her early hallucinations of polka dots. Caused by her schizophrenia, when she looked at the flowers and then looked somewhere else, she would see the after images of polka dots, which absolutely terrified her. This consistent experience in her life would be the archetype of her career's work, being a recurring motif that would persist in most of her pieces. To the left is Kusama's first known illustration to incorporate this, showcasing a drawing of her mother with polka dots. In her rural town, she came across a picture book of the abstract artist Georgia O'Keeffe and was moved to write her a letter with attached examples of her paintings. By a stroke of luck, O'Keeffe wrote back and shared her work with quite a few prominent artists of the time, which allowed her to take a risk and move to New York City with 2,000 drawings in tow in her suitcase in 1959. Then, miraculously, in 1961, she would have her first show titled Infinity Net. As the viewers moved away from the completely filled gallery wall of tiny, hand-painted dots, they would be completely encompassed by the whole net. She would call this process self-obliteration, which she defines as getting lost in the process, which she will get into in a second. Accumulation number 1 is a landmark sculptural piece for bringing hand-stitched soft body forms to the gallery setting, which was relatively unprecedented for the era. She learned how to sew in her formative years as a child laborer during World War II. During the same period of time, she was deeply traumatized from walking into a room where she caught her dad having an affair. She brought the two experiences together, creating pieces of furniture covered in oblong organic shapes, representing her deep fear of phalli, which would become her other main recurring motif through her body of works. Getting back to self-obliteration, Kusama embraces both motifs in ritualistic practice, as a type of therapy to temper her OCD, acting as a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. Defined by the American Psychological Institute, cognitive behavioral therapy is a structured, goal-oriented form of therapy that helps individuals identify and change negative thought patterns and behaviors. Through embracing her fears during self-obliteration, where she ritualistically and repetitiously engaged with things that scare her, she is able to process her trauma. Talking about the process, she once said, "Artists do not usually express their own psychological complexes directly, but I use my complexes and fears as subjects. I am terrified by just the thought of something long and ugly like a phallus entering me, and that is why I make so many of them. The thought of continually eating something like macaroni, spat out by machinery, fills me with fear and revulsion. So I make macaroni sculptures. I make them and keep on making them until I bury myself in the process. I call this obliteration." In a white male dominated art world, it is difficult to make it as an Asian female artist at the highest level. But Kusama felt that her early acceptance with top level artists might make her experience different. But throughout her career, she experienced theft of her fresh ideas by her contemporary artist peers. For instance, shortly after displaying the Accumulation Number 1 piece, Claus Oldenburg came out with a show of soft body pieces such as Soft Calendar for the month of August, which you can see on the left. This theft of her ideas sent her into a spiraling depression in which she attempted to take her own life. Infinity Mirror Room, Balai's Field, might be one of her most important pieces because it combines all of the components that her fans would likely know her for. Balai's Field is the first work where both polka dots and oblong organic shapes exist in the same form factor. This was a landmark for her personal growth because it visualizes that she was able to both see the positive and negative in her lifelong obsessions. Additionally, being in an infinity room, an illusion that makes a limited space feel like it goes on into the infinite, with clean mirrors on all the walls, she was able to visually represent her innate mental domain as an expansive world the viewer can visit. Talking about another piece, she once said, "The polka dot has the form of the sun representing masculine energy, the source of life. The polka dot has the form of the moon representing the feminine principle of reproduction and growth. Polka dots must always multiply into infinity. Our Earth is only one polka dot among millions of others. When Kusama paints your body with polka dots, you become part of the universe." Yayoi Kusama's infinity rooms and polka dots are more popular than ever. She's still alive making art at age 97. She inspires many with her optimism and even inspires myself to make my own mini infinite room sculpture. I've long been a proponent of cognitive behavioral therapy, and through doing research with this project, I am happy to have found an example to point to of its success. In Japanese fiction, the strongest are often depicted as the oldest, and Kusama is a clear example of this trope. I think she is a magical artist who has been consistent in her virtues. I'm impressed that she is still putting out new, exciting masterworks in her old age. Kusama is infinite. Questions. Question 1. If you were in her shoes, would you take the leap to make an art career in New York City? Consider all of her challenges. Question 2. When you make artwork or creative work, are you able to be vulnerable about your fears, trauma, and mental health like Kusama is? Why or why not? Thank you.